Now, 1.5 is about subtractions. 1.4 was about addition. And I remember I said if they have, in addition, if they have the same sign, add the numbers, keep the sign. If they have different signs, subtract the numbers and keep the sign of the large one. So now when it comes to subtraction, we're going to make our subtraction into addition because we know how to add. It's just that when we switch the subtraction, the minus sign, we switch it to plus sign because like I said, we're going to switch it to subtract to addition. Make sure you switch the sign of the next number. So we're going to switch this to plus, but my next number is going to be -3. So once again, switch the minus to a plus, but then switch the sign of the next number. So if it's positive, make it negative, but if it was negative, convert it into positive. Now here, 12 plus a -3, different signs. Just I'm going to follow the rules of subtraction, I mean of addition. I'm going to go 12 minus 3 is 9. Keep the sign of the large number. So my answer is 9. On my example B, I'm going to change this to a plus, but I'm going to make my 7 into negative. So I'm going to subtract my numbers. 7 minus 5, my answer is 2. The sign of the large number is negative, so my answer is -2. Notice how I wrote 12 first. The first number I wrote it on top, but here I wrote 7 on top with my second number. Always write the big number on top. The reason why, because we're subtracting or adding our numbers. So if we're adding, it's no problem, but if we're subtracting, yeah, make sure you put the big number on top. Now for my example C, I'm gonna change this to plus. Remember, I changed my minus to plus, but I switched the sign of the next number. So now here, 15 and 8, they have the same sign, negative and negative. So don't subtract, add your numbers. 15 plus 8 is 23, and keep the sign. So my answer is -23. Here for my example D, I'm going to switch my minus to a plus. I switch the sign of the next number, which I converted into positive. So my numbers are 5 and 3. Let me write 5 and 3. Because they have different signs, I have to subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2. The big number is positive, so it's +2. My example E, I'm going to change this to plus into positive. So I see that they don't have the same fraction, I mean the same denominator. 8 and 5 can both be converted into 40. In order for 8 to become 40, I had to multiply it by 5. So let me multiply the top by 5 as well. 3 times 5 gives me 15. In order for 5 to become 40, I multiply by 8. So let me multiply the top by 8 as well. 4 times 8 is 32. Now here, notice how I left the 32 or 40 as a positive because it was positive. So I know in fractions, I copy the denominator, in this case 40. I'm just going 15 plus 32. Right? 15 plus 32 gives us 47. So 47 over 40. Some cases when we don't like the big number on top, like here, we're just gonna go 40 divided into 47. 40 into 47 goes in once, because 1 times 40 is 40. When I subtract this number, it is 7. My remainder is 7. So we call this 7 over 40. So 47 over 40 is fine, but we call that improper. If we want to change that to mixed numbered, we're going to call that 1 and 7/40. And the reason why we do that, because we don't like the big number on top of a fraction. Now, looking at my example F, for space on my example F, let me erase all my writing. Now, for my F, my minus, I'm going to change this to plus, but I'm going to switch the sign of the next number. So my numbers are 8.75, 2.41. One of them is a negative, the other one is a positive, so that means the signs are different. So I'm going to subtract my values. 5 minus 1 is 4. 7 minus 4 is 3. There's my decimal point. 8 minus 2 is 6. Right? Because they had different signs, I subtracted. And I'm going to keep the sign of the large number. So it's going to be -6.34. Once again, on addition, if they had the same sign, we add. If they have a different sign, we subtract. But for subtraction, change the minus to a plus and change the sign of the following number. And then just follow the rules of addition. Here, let me take a look at group first. So we're going to do operations where there are groups. My eye is only on the group, but within the big group, there's a smaller group. So the big group looks like 2 minus 11. Notice how I did 8 plus 3. That's how I got the 11. So 2 minus 11, right? I'm going to change this to plus negative. So 2 plus a negative 11, I'm going to call this negative 9. Notice how I subtracted my numbers and kept the sign of the large number because the signs were different. All right, so now you see this right here, negative 6 minus the thing outside of the group. I'm just going to copy it over here, negative 6 minus. Okay, so I know I told you guys your minuses, change it to plus, but change the sign of the following number. So just to make this a little bit more clear, I have negative 6 plus a positive 9. And I'm going to call that 3. And I subtracted them because they had different signs and kept the sign of the large number. Now here for my example B, I'm only going to be looking at the group. But my group, I notice I have fractions. But also on my group, I'm going to change this to minus to a plus and obviously switch the next sign. So instead of negative, I'm going to call it positive. I'm going to call this 1 over 12 plus 3 over 12. Notice how I switched them to the same denominator. I didn't switch my first fraction, just 1 over 12. But notice on my second fraction, I multiplied everything by 3. So it will be 3 over 12 because I want the denominator to be the same thing. 1 over 12 plus 3 over 12. We know on fractions, we keep the denominator, and then we just go 1 plus 3, which is 4. 4 over 12, you know, we can deal with 4 over 12. It is a fraction, but 4 over 12, if I divide each number by 4, just to make it more smaller, my number's a little more simple, divide each number by 4, and is 1/3. So once again, this whole group is 1/3. So now I have 2 over 3, which is what I had outside of the group, 2 over 3 minus 1/3. Remember my minus, I switch it to a plus, switch the sign of the next number. I copy the denominator. I'm going to copy the 3. I have 2 plus a negative 1. They have different signs, so I have to subtract them and keep the sign of the large number. So my number is 1/3. And then here with words, difference means minus. So we have the difference of, as a matter of fact, let me do a minus because we're dealing with minus, the difference of negative 3 and negative 8. So we're going to do negative 3 and negative 8. Notice how I put my negative 8 in parentheses, just so the signs will not be minus minus. It's minus a negative. We use parentheses just so we can separate them from the minus. Now, remember in addition, added 2, when we did addition, it said added 2. It was addition, but we switched the order of the numbers. Same thing when we said subtracted from. So 12 subtracted from 18 is the same thing as 18 minus 12. Notice how I switched the order of the numbers. Now here, from blah, 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 subtract 12. So from 12, subtract 8, we're just going to go 12 minus 8. Right? This one is not going to switch the order because we're starting with a number from 12. So we're starting at number 12. But if it's the from has a subtracted before it, so subtracted from, that's when we switch the order. Now here less, the word less means minus. 6 less 5, we're just gonna go 6 minus 5. And less than, notice I have the little asterisk there. It's kind of like when we had in addition, we had more than. The word then means it's switch the order. So less is minus, we're subtracting, But 6 less than 5 is the same thing as 5 minus 6. The order of the numbers gets switched. And here, decrease by 9 decreased by -4. And then the word minus, or 8 minus 5, we're just going to go 8 minus 5. All these are the cases of subtraction, but the important ones are, well, not important, but tricky ones, subtracted from or less than. Those make the order of the numbers switch. So if it's asking for a numerical expression, just do that. And then simplify. What it means simplify is I'm just going to change this to a plus positive. Just basically work it out. That's what simplify means. Here, I'm dealing with addition, but the signs are different. So I'm going to subtract my numbers and keep the sign of the large number. Here, I'm going to change this to plus negative. So the signs are different. So I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of the large number. Here, I'm going to switch this to plus a negative. Remember, we make it into plus, but we switch the sign of the following number. Signs are different, so I'm going to subtract my numbers, keep the sign of the large number. Here, I'm going to go plus a negative. Subtract the numbers because they have different signs. 6 minus 5 is 1, and keep the sign of the large number. Here, I'm going to switch this to plus -6. Notice I have positive 5, -6, different signs. So subtract the numbers, keep the sign of the large number. And then my second to last, I'm going to change this to plus positive. +9, +4, the same sign. So add the numbers and keep the sign. On my last example, I'm going to call this plus a negative. So now they have different signs. So subtract your numbers and keep the sign of the large number. So let me show you guys more examples. That was kind of quick. So let's take a look at some examples here. Instructions are write a numerical expression for each phrase. So just write the numerical expression and then simplify the expression. So the difference of, that means minus. So we're going to subtract. I'm going to subtract -8 and 5. But I said subtraction, change it to plus, because we know how to add. Change it to plus and change the sign that comes after the sign. -8, -5. They have the same sign. So I'm going to add my numbers and keep the sign. So my answer is -13. For my second example, 4 subtracted from, so just to begin here, 4 subtracted from, there's a minus, but my 4 comes after. Remember, subtracted from makes the switch the order of the numbers. Before the minus, we're going to have the sum of 8 and 3. So because it's more than a number, I'm going to put it inside parentheses. And we have the sum of 8 and -3. I know I have to work groups first. So if we work the group, 8 plus a -3, that's 5. Because I subtracted my numbers, kept the sign of the large number. And then 5 minus 4, I'm going to simplify that to just 1. My other example, my other 8, this should be C, but my other 8, 4 less than, it's a 4, remember it switches the order of the number, so there's a 4 at the end, and then before the minus, I'm going to have -6, and then I say switch the minus to a plus, switch the sign of the next number, -6, -4, that gives me -10. I added the numbers and kept the sign. My next example, 8 decreased by 5 less than, so all this is going to be less than, remember my less than makes me switch the order of the numbers, so less than 12. Let me work my group first. 8 minus 5, that's 3. So I have 12 minus 3. Notice that all I did was my group. And 12 minus 3, we call that 9. Lastly, let's take a look in words. The record high temperature of 134 degrees Fahrenheit in the U.S. was recorded at Death Valley, California in 1913. The record low was negative 80 in Alaska in 1971 in Prospect Creek. What is the difference between this highest and lowest temperature? So highest, the highest numbered is 134, right, in Death Valley. So 134, I mean 134 minus, because it's asking us what's the difference. The low number was negative 80. I'm going to use negative 80. Remember I said switch the minus to a plus, switch the sign that comes after. So 134 and 80, because they have the same sign, I'm going to add my numbers. 214, and keep the sign. So the difference is 214 degrees.